Hello and welcome back to the Oh No 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 podcast. Now, with the temperature on the rise and the summer solstice passing, we're once again back here to discuss the silly season nonsense that's going on at Starks Park with all the pre-season well underway. I'm your host tonight, Robbie Weir, and been delighted firstly to be joined by a sweltering Carol Smith in Barcelona. Weather update, Carol. How are you doing?
It's currently 32 degrees in my office. It's 35 degrees on my terrace. And I don't want to see the sunshine again. I'm done. It's not even July.
They can't really do the social media bit of like how's the weather admin in Barcelona when it's just perpetually sunny.
Yes.
We've got the opposite end of the scale here with Leslie Mabin, who's just a bit on the wind up here. But yeah, talk to us, Les.
Aye, so tonight I've come dressed as John Fredrickson. I thought with it being the 30th anniversary of the games against Goto Trotterflag and Akranes, I would break out a Nordic sweater. It's 13 degrees in Oban, grey, and the rain is moving horizontally in sheets. We did get the heat wave it passed as well. I just thought I would dress up a bit for the evening to troll Carl. I do have to have the window wide open though, because it is actually boiling, this thing.
If we take a break at half time and you appear back just in a t-shirt, that's fair enough, Leslie.
Yeah.
We'll get to that point there. Just really to kick us off tonight, I mean, a lot of transfer talk, but we'll come to that in a little bit. But yeah, the first thing to really cover off, just the fixtures announced. Carol, Rovers get a home game, the first home game that we've had since the infamous 4-4 draw against Hamilton Accies. We'll be playing Queen's Park. Possible acid test for the Rovers going into that game. 2 ex-Rovers returning in the form of Aidan Connolly and Ewan Murray. What were your thoughts when you saw that initially?
First genuine thought was that's an easy day one, but then the respect to me came out and I was like, well, we have to be a little bit respectful. But yeah, it would be a shame if we didn't win on the opening day of the season, I think is the polite way to put it.
Yeah, it's I know that we sort of mentioned it before, but Queen's Park, I think that their fans are sort of talking about their demise being vastly exaggerated as they've continued signing sort of full-time players. There was sort of speculation if they might go hybrid, and I guess they'll know more about the ins and outs of the situation with Willie Haughey just taking away his funding effectively. Really hard to say. They are a bit egregious in terms of their own social media. They've been using with Lesser Hamden, their tagline is lesser is more, which is for a lot of fans a bit frustrating to see. But yeah, then after that, Les, straight away, second week, we're going away to Ayr. Didn't win there last season, so really difficult sort of first 4 games, you would say, in terms of going down the line away to Partick as well after the derby to Dunfermline. What were your thoughts on seeing the initial fixtures?
I mean, to an extent, I'm quite pragmatic about the fixtures because ultimately you do have to play everybody 4 times. And if you play somebody earlier or later, you've still got to play them. And I think, like I said at the end of last season, you can very easily get sucked into that kind of mental gymnastics of, you're going to have nothing to play for by that point. A couple of things that did jump out at me. So the last, again, just along those lines, the last 2 fixtures are St Johnstone and Ross County. And clearly everybody thinking, these 2 teams are going to be up at the top of the league. But again, that can work either way. That didn't stop Partick last season. It didn't stop Partick taking points off both those teams. So, I mean, the only thing I did know is we've at least got a nice few runs of games before we've got the first Airdrie game. So hopefully we've got a chance to get some points on the board before we inevitably drop our first 3 points to a 67th minute goal in a 1-0 defeat. But no, as I say, for fixture lists, I'm always quite pragmatic ultimately about how they work out. Quite nice to have a home game, as you say, to start. Now, I did put a tweet out, some of you might remember, after we got beaten 3-0 by Falkirk, where I said I would cycle to the first game of the season if we avoided relegation. Now, I've been training for this. So I've been out on the bike, I've been building up the distances day on day. I'm still undecided as to whether I'm going to go to Elgin or Queen's Park. And the reason I say this is Elgin is actually a lot safer for a cyclist to do than getting from Oban to Kirkcaldy. And the chances of not getting killed on the A85 are a lot higher. So I'm considering coming up to Elgin on the bike. But it's going to be a couple of days there when I'm very much looking forward to it, and that will teach me. I think that's the moral of the story there for anybody is if you're going to put reactive statements out, take ownership of them.
Yeah, I think that Elgin's probably going to be the better choice for that, Liz. If I'm being brutally honest, we would like to keep you about on the podcast. We don't want to be losing you anytime soon. So please, if you could ensure your safety on the way, that'd be most welcome. I mean, the only slight change that we've seen, other than that, was the pre-season friendly at Stirling obviously got canned. That's been quite publicised. We won't go into the ins and outs of that. But yeah, that's been switched to a Linlithgow away tie. We seem to have a good relationship with Linlithgow. And it was one where I was sort of maybe thinking about earlier as well. If they're introducing these sort of cooperation things, is it one that we might explore going forward? If we've got maybe a few younger lads coming through from the community foundation, if we go down that route, maybe that's something that the club can explore because they're maybe not going to get the game time at Rovers, but they can offer them deals in a professional environment, and yeah, at the same time let them go out. Again, that's another discussion point for another day, where we maybe use that system that I know that we've spoken about at quite great length. Certainly Duncan has. But maybe use it to our advantage for a situation. Would we be hypocritical about that potentially? But again, another discussion for another day. So the first arrival that we've had after Jay Rowe has been Aidan Glavin, who's came in. He's originally been at Kilmarnock. He had 31 games last season though, on loan at Elgin City. Speak of the devil. Bit of a viral moment in the Scottish Cup where he saved 6 penalties in the one game against Clyde. But aside from that, he's had pretty positive reviews from the Elgin fans. 20 years old, Carol. Do you think he's still going to be looking to make an impact coming in? Obviously, potentially surprise a few people, catch us off guard.
But just before the podcast, I watched his interview and he seems to be determined he wants game time. He's not there just to sit on the bench and learn. He's there to put into practice what he's learning. So he's definitely there for some action. But it'll be competitive because we have got a strong goalkeeping squad. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, he looks and sounds enthusiastic and strong-willed.
Yeah, and Liz, did you make of the deal? Again, he's came from Kilmarnock. He's had sort of youth caps for Scotland as well, which is positive to see that he's been able to take those steps. But what did you make of that coming through? Maybe a bit left field?
It was. I mean, it's always the thing with a goalkeeper. When you're bringing a younger goalkeeper in, it's going to be quite hard for him to get game time. I mean, any other position, there's a reasonable chance that at some point somebody's going to pick up an injury or a suspension or just need a rest and they're going to get a chance. With goalkeepers, it's probably a lot harder and it's much harder to get game time. So this is clearly when he's been brought in, and like Carl says, he did in the interview, he's kind of quite adamant that he's going to be fighting for the jersey, which is good actually. It's good to have a bit of competition. So I mean, I do wonder where we're going to use him, when we're going to use him. You would imagine that the other incumbent, who will no doubt come on in a second, is coming here to start games. But like I say, it's a bit of a bonus to have somebody else who can add something, maybe add a wee bit of competition in. So I saw as well, I think the writing was on the wall. Andrew McNeil had then just put something out about him moving on and looking for opportunities, and again, really thank him for his service that he's given us. And then a goalkeeper of his quality, I'm sure, will find a club soon. But this is clearly one coming in for the future with Aidan Glavin, and let's just hope that he gets the chances to develop while he's here.
Yeah, I think it's, again, just to extend what you've said there, Andy McNeil's obviously stepped up to the mark when he's been needed. I feel like he probably wants an opportunity to get regular football at an SPFL club, and I'd imagine that there's going to be quite a few. He was probably one of the best players for Bonnyrigg going into the latter half of last season, and unfortunately they go down thanks to their points deduction to put them into the playoffs. So he can hold his head high, and I'm sure that he's probably got quite a lot of suitors in terms of clubs that are interested in taking him in. But then, again, to focus on the future with Aidan Glavin, really keen to see how he does. Again, that experience of being able to get the first team football at Elgin at a good level, to be able to go in and look with that confidence. I thought it was a good touch from Josh Ray to sort of say that he'll, even though he's going to be the more experienced of the two goalkeepers, he's still going to be taking bits from Glavin, and likewise returning the favour. And that will go as well for sort of younger players. Obviously, Rovers have sort of, within our support, we've notoriously got a younger keeper within the Community Foundation, who obviously stands out, towers over the rest as a bit of a giant, who's sort of, again, as a younger player, that's one that's to potentially keep an eye on moving forward if that comes into any sort of fruition. But yeah, just a solid move, I feel, from Barry Robson to wrap up a young goalkeeping prospect, because let's be honest, it's been well publicised in terms of Scotland that goalkeepers are a very hard position to stake down, very difficult, particularly within the top flight, to sort of pin out any sort of keepers going forward. So if he can make his mark, and I'm sure that Aidan will feel that going forward that he's got that opportunity to do so at Rafe, it's all the better for us if we can get a bit of competition going for the goalkeeping jersey.
Just to come in quickly though, a question on that. He is Scot. I'm just wondering with his name, would he be eligible for Ireland as well? I should probably check that before I spout it off. But
completely honest and say I'm not too sure.
Let's be very unprofessional and see if we can find anything out in real time as we're talking. So, I'm just wondering who he might be eligible for. Yeah, I mean, clearly, of Scotland, of Scottish origin with his name. I can't see anything that says he might be eligible for another country, but yeah, he would definitely be eligible for Scotland.
I mean, if he's getting call-ups for the youth team youth set up within the Scottish international scene, you would hope that he's, if he does have a superlative rise among the ranks and kicks on to a degree that maybe nobody foresees at this early point, then hopefully he could be one for the future. But if that happens, I'm all here for it. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Of course, the main sort of goalkeeping news, Carol, Josh Ray returns permanently. Good to get two goalkeepers in quickly for Rovers.
Yeah, it's good, and it just in general, it seems to be that Robson is building a squad, not just trying to get promotion, get to a certain thing. Obviously, those are the goals, but it does seem like he's trying to build a solid squad, and the two goalkeepers are definitely going to work well together. I think they seem to be open to learning from each other, very open to learning from Robbie Thompson.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leslie, just obviously with Josh, he's a player that we're well familiar with, having watched him with Airdrie 2 seasons ago, and then of course he comes in on loan, and then we go 10 games unbeaten at the tail end of the season. How important do you think that sort of familiarity is to have that defence that, again, for the most part, aside from maybe the right-hand side where we've got a couple of new faces, to have the sort of Stevenson, Fordyce, Doherty, Hanlon, that cohesion going into a new season that we can already sort of naturally build on?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we talked about it at the end of last season. Callum Fordyce came on in leaps and bounds after he recovered from his various injuries and his illness. And I think a lot of that is down to getting him back in, but also getting him back in next to a guy who's played 600 professional games, but then having behind him the keeper that he's played the last 2 seasons basically with. I mean, that's a big bonus. I really think that Fordyce kind of hitting form has got a lot to do with that. Just bringing in a goalkeeper who he knows, that's got to be in your mind, that you're not having to second guess what the keeper's doing. You're not going to have to second guess whether Captain Bombscare is going to come running halfway out or not, but you actually know what's going to go on. That's got to help, and just having that continuity with the defence, that's got to be a bonus. I mean, Josh Ray's he's a good keeper, and you'll see St Johnstone fans saying, "Oh, he was rubbish. Oh, we're losing one of our worst players." He was absolutely fine when we had him in, and he's a good Championship goalkeeper. He's a great acquisition. I think him joining was almost kind of became a bit of an open secret as well, thanks to the presence of some paparazzi in and around Starks Park equipped with zoom lenses. So, just as a wee word to those of you who are doing so, I mean, I know it's great, but I assume you're on study leave at the moment, and it's not worth bombing out of your standard grade English to try and be the Fife Fabrizio Romano. So, fair play for doing so, but stay in at school as well, guys. joking aside, though, very, very good to have Josh Ray. Good to have him signed up pretty quickly for the upcoming season. And really, I don't think, if you look at the keepers that are out there, that's probably the best we could have got. And it's my fears have been allayed that somebody else backed by like crypto or semiconductor money was going to come in and swipe them from under our noses. So I'm really glad that we've got that one tied up. I think it's one of the ones that it made sense to all parties for a long time. St Johnstone told him he wasn't needed. That didn't change with him being relegated.
Be brutally honest, Les, I don't think he wanted to be there. I
was just going to say, first of all, St Johnstone told him he wasn't needed. He didn't want to be there. He had a great time with us, by all accounts. He was keen to come back, by all accounts, and it was just a no-brainer for all parties that once the specifics were ironed out that this was going to happen. So I'm very glad that we have got it over the line.
Yeah, you do touch on a very good point, though, about sort of crypto bros and semiconductor magnets, shall we say, and that when you look about the business across the division that's been done already, Dunfermline, the only keeper on their books at the moment is Dennis Mehmet.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, which is good laugh, potentially, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. And then you look as well, Partick Thistle have signed Lewis Badmanakis back, who'd been on loan to them last season. So he's obviously a familiar face. They'd lost out. David Mitchell has gone to Ayr. I don't even know if St Johnstone have brought in a keeper. I do have Nere's toe poker up in the background, so I'm just going to have a quick look there. But in general, I think you're quite easy to sort of say, look, it could have been potentially that one of these, they've not signed a keeper, St Johnstone, as of yet, but it's one of these ones where it's quite easy to sort of foresee a club like a Dunfermline, who, I mean, it's a lot has been made of their money, but there's not really been too much in terms of their transfer business that's really jumped out of big bucks being chucked about, which I guess from their point of view is probably a good thing, because a lot of people have sort of thrown in the likes of your Brian Grahams, I know even like James Forrest, Stuart Armstrong. Obviously, these things grow arms and legs so quickly because it's so easy to sort of say after what happened with Victor Wanyama, but you can easily sort of foresee a situation where Dunfermline say, actually, we're going to put in more money than maybe another club like Raith Rovers would be willing to put into a bid for Josh Ray, and then sort of lay down a good wage. And as a professional, I'm sure that he's just trying to get the best for himself. If you're offered more money than another club, football's a really short career. So, yeah, it does make a really good point that we've got in there early, we've negotiated a deal, which I think suits every party involved. Carol, just to come back to you, Leslie mentioned it before, he's obviously came through a lot of criticism from the Perth Saints fans, but do you think easy to sort of say, but he'll have a point to prove, because we've got 5 games against St Johnstone this season, so he's got the opportunity to go there and sort of show them what he's all about?
Well, with 5 opportunities, you'd certainly do 5 times. Seriously, 5 times.
League Cup and 4 league games.
There's some things that you just erase from your memory in the heat, and that was one of them. Jeez, 5 times. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's my, and this is not a concern, but when we had him, he wasn't tested really. It's going to be seeing how he does, like in his first big game being tested. Is we haven't seen him really being pushed, but he sounds like he's positive. He's certainly shown himself at the end of the last season, and as Leslie said, it's a solid goalkeeper, solid defence, and they communicate well. Something changed in the last 6-7 games of last season. The communication clicked. Everybody trusted each other. So that's can only be a positive, I think.
Yeah, I think we saw that at both ends of the pitch, because we started getting a lot more sort of opportunities from headers at set pieces as well. And now again, Jamie Gullen being removed from the mix. Whether we're sort of looking down that route and the options that we're exploring. But Les, what are your thoughts on that? Again, it's been a sort of common theme when discussing Josh Ray that we're maybe still to see the best of him yet, and that because the defence was so solid at the tail end of the last season, do you think that's something that we can really labour a point on, or are you not too worried about that given how solid the defence overall were?
too worried about that. I think it was Blair had said it a couple of podcasts ago. You think about the kind of Paolo Maldini thing, if I've had to make a tackle, I've already made a mistake. The fact that he's not been tested could be, just like Carol was just saying, is it because he's communicating better? Is it because he's organising the defence better? Is it because the defence trust him? Also, even you never know if you think about how we've changed how we play. If we're doing things further up the park that are stopping calamitous things happening, that are forcing him into these big saves. So, I mean, I'm not too concerned about that. We played a range of good opposition, and he did make some good saves. He had a very good game away to Partick in the absolutely appalling conditions with the appalling tackles from certain players. And so he has made good saves. He has made big saves. He is a competent keeper. So I'm not overly concerned about him not having been tested as such.
Well, we did end up, I'd sort of speculated about it 2 podcasts ago, but we did actually end up doing a bit of a deal with St Johnstone, because initially there had sort of been discussions about fees and how do we make ends meet. And I'd sort of thrown the idea out there to blow my own trumpet of potentially leveraging the situation involving Sam Stanton. So that, to be honest, the deal itself appeared to come together really, really quickly. And it was sort of mentioned, I think, by the Courier. And then within a couple of days, it was all sorted. What did you make of that, Leslie? Do you think that's a good bit of business? I know that there's sort of people on the outside are saying that St Johnstone have won a bit of a watch, but what are your thoughts on this whole sort of situation? Where do you stand on it?
Weirdly enough, I was actually having this conversation with myself while I was out training on the bike today, and I forgot I was speaking out loud, and I scared a wifey with her window open and a cue as I was going past, as I said something like, it makes sense when you know what the context is. So anyway, I'll start that spiel again from the beginning, because I had been thinking about this. And, like you say, it's one of these ones, from the outside, you look at effectively a direct swap for Sam Stanton and Josh Ray, and you would think a decent championship keeper being swapped for the guy that was probably player of the season before. It looks ostensibly nuts. But we don't need to go into the details, but we reached a situation where we had a player that did not want to be here, and both the player and the club made no bones about that. It had been reported in the press. It's not just bullshit on forums. It had actually been reported by the club and by the player himself. Didn't want to be here. Frees up a big wage. Realistically, he's going to go somewhere else, and the chances are he was going to go to another club in the division. I don't think going to the Premier League was going to be an option. If that helped us to get the Josh Ray deal over the line, then I think, yeah. When you understand what's happened with this individual over the last 12 months, I think it's a lot of sense. It's the best way to just draw a line under the whole thing for all parties. So I think it's just good that this has happened, and it can stop being an unwelcome distraction off the pitch. I think that's all I certainly want to say about that anyway.
Yeah, I think it was a real measure of where people are in terms of how optimistic you are in terms of relationship recovery, and glass half full and glass half empty. I was very much in the negative, or more pragmatic, I'll say, camp for it all. Just in terms of people, there was a lot of people that were always still like, he's a really great player, we should be doing everything to try and mend it. But you've got to be realistic about it, and you've got to say, like, he wasn't going to be pulling on a Rovers shirt again. His head had been, I don't know how or what had happened, obviously, behind the scenes in terms of the whole situation. Again, to reiterate, there's a lot of conjecture that gets put out there, and conjecture can be harmful to all manner of people in terms of the off the field, from the players, for the rest of the squad, for people behind the scenes at the club as well, because some of the stuff that you see like getting put out, it's just not worth talking about. It's just, so people deserve the right to that. Again, there's going to be very few people that know sort of the full situation. I'm not one of them myself. But yeah, Carol, do you think a bit of a sad end to a player that really was worshipped by the fan base a couple of seasons ago, and then obviously the situation sort of deteriorates? What did you make of the move? And do you think it was sort of really positive means to an end in terms of getting the Josh Ray deal over the line? Where are you standing on things?
I mean, just simply, you've got someone who, like, everyone's had a job that you're just not happy in, and it's nothing maybe neither part has done anything. It's just you're not happy, they're not happy, and the best thing to do is go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's, from the sounds of it, Josh Ray was in a similar situation with St Johnstone. He wouldn't have been happy another season there. Sam Stanton wouldn't have been happy another season with Raith Rovers. So it seems like a sensible thing for people's playing careers, but also for their mental health.
Yeah.
You've got to be happy in your job. And it was evident in the last game with Sam Stanton that he was not happy and he didn't want to be there. And you can try and mend it all you want, but yeah, no, I think it's best for him and his future to go to St Johnstone, and we've got a good deal with Josh Ray, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm standing on it as well. I mean, I think that with Sam Stanton, the remainder of the contract, he had a year left on his deal. I think the likelihood is that he's going to be one of our highest earners, if not the highest earner, particularly when he signed his contract renewal. He was in such a rich vein of form. To be honest, at that time, I was really surprised that we did get the deal done. And I think with the way that football transfers work, it's not the Jim McLean era of signing players on for a 9-year deal and they're stuck. You've got to be realistic that he had a year left, and that if he wasn't going to play, that's a very expensive player to have on your books.
Yeah.
And I think that the club have leveraged it absolutely. I think the club have actually leveraged the situation really well to get a real player that we can sort of say, it's not some random player that we don't know. It's not a player that we're getting foisted on us. Like, you remember back to the David Bates sort of when he went to Rangers, and we got Ryan Hardy, who was a great player, Jordan Thompson, and Scott Roberts back on loan. And everyone's asking the question, like, well, it's not really the best for us, is it? Because we're getting Ryan Hardy, who's great, but we're still stuck with these players that you don't really want, and they're only on loan deals, and Scott Roberts arrives on a permanent. And I mean, don't know about lack of effort. I wouldn't ever accuse him of that, but at the same time, just technically not the level that we needed at that point to sell effectively a youth player for a bag of pips. And the club tried to justify it, and they were up against it. Whereas with the Stanton situation, I feel like there's a real, like, we've had Josh Ray in before. He works for the club. He works in terms of our defensive setup. He wasn't, as you say, he wasn't wanted at St Johnstone. Their fans are very, very vocally against him. So really it's an opportunity for all parties to move forward and just be able to move on. And yeah, I think for Sam Stanton, again, he's not going to be wanting to sit there for another year. By the time that he'd leave his contract, he would have been, 32, 33. And that's very much into the sort of past the twilight years.
It's a fresh start, I think, for all involved. Everyone can, it's new clubs for everyone involved, new fans, and a new stage to sell yourself on. Is draw a line under it, and this is it. Let's start the new season afresh.
Yeah, absolutely, fully agree. So what we'll do is we will take a short break, and we will be back just after a word from Andy's Man's Club.
Blair. Yes, mate. You're a man.
Yes.
And you have thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Are you good at talking about all that stuff?
Well, I try my best, but I don't know, probably not as much as I should.
I'm the same. I feel better after getting stuff like that off my chest, but I don't do it anywhere near often enough. Have you heard about Andy's Man Club?
They're brilliant. They create a safe space for men to sit down and talk about the important stuff, and they do it right across the country as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've got more than 200 meetings across the UK, and it's every Monday night at 7 o'clock, including one at Starks Park.
And if anyone wants more information on it, they can go to andysmanclub.co.uk or search for Andy's Man Club on Facebook. It's okay to talk, and now we're going to get back to talking about the Rovers.
Okay, and welcome back to the Oh No 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 podcast, where again it's time to talk about another arrival from down south. So he arrived on the same day as Josh Ray, effectively. He was sort of photoed at the stadium during the press releases, as Leslie mentioned, by the mysterious sort of study leave paparazzi. But yeah, we've got Richard Chin joining us, the first Malaysian Raith Rovers player, I believe, in our books. 22 years old. He's a full-back stroke winger stroke central defensive midfielder who's arrived from Farnborough, who played in the Vanarama South. Last season, 42 games, 7 goals, 6 assists, and he's an ex-Charlton youth player. Leslie, as you just sort of touched on before. J Rowe obviously comes to Rovers, so this is another unfamiliar name in Scotland. But do you think it shows sort of in terms of the scouting, the players that we're looking at, particularly with the way that the game's going, that the next broadening, that we're looking into these sort of players down south now, not going, as we touched on before, you never want to go full Paul Hartley at Falkirk, but to maybe bring in a few of these potential prospects that are, you look across the data and the performances they've had, maybe coming out of sort of former youth academies down south into that sort of Vanarama north-south full Vanarama league, and potentially offering them a stage to sort of go on and kick on.
The first thing that I think is important to be really clear about is this is not signing regens. So J Rowe basically played every game last season for his club. And Richard Chin as well, he's got a good 50, 60 senior games under his belt. You know, we're not bringing guys in here where the highlight reel is them scoring worldies in front of a privet hedge. You know, it's not guys who've been at the under-23s and have been released and have only played against other under-23s. We're bringing guys in here who have got a good few seasons of senior football against players of all levels under their belts. And I think that is a world of difference compared to some of the other players that we've seen come up recently from down south. So I think that's the first thing they're going to be absolutely clear about. It is going to be a very different environment. That goes for Rowe and it goes for Chin as well. It's going to be a different environment to what they're used to. I'm going to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how the standard of the different leagues compares, but there's a lot of money and a lot of good players down about the 5th, 6th tier of English football. And clearly, Barry Robson, John Potter and the scouting team clearly think there's something there and that this is a market worth exploring. And I mean, the other thing just to kind of maybe flag up on that as well is there's really not a lot of players out there. You know, if you look at guys that are getting signed, and so Ayr United are always who I kind of use as our kind of barometer. They're probably, I think, the team that's closest to us in terms of finances and fan base and ambitions and things like that. You know, Ayr are sort of, with respect, announcing guys like Liam Dick as flagship signings. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the point is, it's quite a small pool of players that are out there. And, you know, you're competing with a number of clubs for a vanishingly small number of players. So I think there's a hats off to the club for trying something different as regards to recruitment, you know, for maybe tapping into markets that we've perhaps not explored so far. And as you say, looking for these guys that have got a good couple of seasons of senior football. I mean, just the last thing to say as well. So clearly, I believe Richard was born and raised in the UK, but he is eligible for Malaysia. And I've seen some of the Malaysian football Twitter accounts have picked up on this. And this is a really exciting thing because there's a brilliant football culture in Malaysia. There's a brilliant fan culture in Malaysia. And there's people out there who love their football. We're a very extremely online community who will be looking out for Malaysian footballers all over the world. So, you know, if things go well, if Richard gets some game time, and the fact he's been given what looks like the number 7 jersey suggests that's going to happen, you know, we've got potential here for a pretty big fan base to be coming along with us as well. So no, I'm very excited to see both of these guys starting and seeing how they adapt to Scottish football.
Yeah, I mean, the main link, I think, in terms of Malaysia and Scottish football is previously the fact that Sean Maloney was born there.
Yeah, I was having a wee sneaky look on Wikipedia because I couldn't remember if it was Aidan McGeady or Sean Maloney, because I was going to make some wisecrack about him not being the first Malaysian eligible person to score at Starks Park, but I got the wrong one. So I'm glad that you were able to correct me before I came in with that.
That's all right. That's absolutely fine, Leslie. We pride ourselves on our accuracy, but we'll see if we can bump up our viewing stats on Spotify to increase up to maybe 2% for those in Malaysia listening to the Oh No 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 podcast, if we're optimistic on this. Whether they catch the bug or not, we'll see. But yeah, just to reiterate to your point and go back to it though, when you look across Scottish football, I mean, last season we had 2 players come from down south up. We had Cody David, who'd arrived from Accrington, which was League 2, And you also had Frankie Dabble, who'd been previously at Forest Green, which was also League Two, but then been relegated, and he'd been released, but more famously known for his spell at Coventry, being a bit of a sort of cult hero there. I did sort of catch a bit of a discussion about sort of, these are signings that we've had. I think it was actually Sean on Pine Bovril sort of saying, look, we were signing players from a higher level in England before. Now, again, I know that this is ostensibly not his point, but when you look across the Scottish game, sort of some of the responses were actually a bit enlightening in terms of who was coming back and sort of saying, when you look at some of the players that have came up, like Deepo Akinyemi, he came up from, I think, 2 levels below the league that Richard Chin's playing at. And even Sidibe, who is still at St Johnstone, he came up from, I think it's the level below. So it does show that there is a pool of players there, and it's less about sort of the individuals' sort of league that they're at, and I think more in terms of the career trajectory and what they can offer. So hopefully, being able to give these guys who are in their sort of early 20s, want to do well. They've came up, they've obviously seen the facilities. Richard Chin was saying that he was up checking out the stadium even before he'd signed. Clearly got a bit of a will to do well there. And then on top of that, I did sort of see a article that was mentioning, I think it was a non-league paper in England, sort of he's already chatted to them, just sort of saying he's wanting away from the distractions of English football, just a sort of new start for him effectively. So keen to see how things pan out with that one. Now, Carol, I mentioned his positions there. We've obviously had a bit of experience with that before with Jordan Doherty coming in, shown really the importance of being able to be a utility player. Richard Chin obviously covering potentially a few positions in the squad. Might show that Barry Robson's maybe looking to move away from that sort of wing backs, even still. Do you think that's really something that's been highlighted with this signing, being able to sort of get players that are maybe adaptable so that you can play multiple systems yet not be restricted by personnel?
I think so. And he's also looking for a squad that's physically fit. They're all mentioning like their run tests starting back. I think in the interview it was mentioned that Chin's is really fast. Callum Hanna is going to take Usain Bolt's world record at some point. We look like we're building the squad, but also from the business point of view, is we can't throw money at our squad. And if we get promoted, or when we get promoted next season, let's be positive, when we get promoted next season, we're not going to have money then to throw it at a squad. So we need a solid squad to go for the next couple of seasons. And that seems to be the plan. And it seems to be, we're not just going to get a squad that can only do one thing. We're going to have multiple options. But within our means, we're making sensible business choices as well as squad choices, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a clear indication that we're moving away from sort of the signings that we've made before. And I think the ones that we've made before are ones that you take because the opportunity's there. You look at Hanlon, Fordyce, Stevenson, for example, all sort of early 30s, mid-30s, where they're there, they're available, they've got the experience and you can build a squad around them. So it's really supplementing that with younger players that, again, potentially kick on maybe in the formative stages of their career and being able to give them a sort of floor where they can potentially go on and kick on. Because you never know with either of these guys that have came up from down south and with the younger players that we've got in our squad, the likes of Kai Montague, Lewis Gibson, only takes half a season for the Red Tops to then start saying, oh, this club's interested in you. Do you want to potentially go? Like, say, for instance, if you move to Hearts or Hibs or even clubs down south, Aberdeen, etc., up north, it only takes that sort of spell where people sit up and take interest in you. And we've seen that numerous times before. I mean, Kevin Nisbet's probably a good example where he's just bounced up the league so quickly and gone for bigger and bigger fees each time. One thing with Richard Chin, again, he's another player that's left his former club quite highly rated. Sort of fans on social media wishing him all the best, not sort of, oh, you'll be lucky if you can get a tune out of him, or, oh, there's a player there if you can manage to crack the work ethic. Looking at Corey David with that one. But yeah, just, it's one where I'm keen to see how it goes, I think, for both of these guys coming up from England. And again, because they're something a bit different, they'll probably attract the attention of the fans. They'll get that sort of cult personality behind it. And as supporters, that's something that you can always enjoy. So you mentioned Callum Hanna there, Carol. Signs a 1-year deal, so he extends his contract. And the indication that maybe Barry Robson's looking to potentially develop there. I know sort of he's had those 2 loan spells, which are probably a point of frustration for him last season, going to Montrose and Clyde and not getting game time. But Barry Robson, obviously, as a coach, the likes of him, John Potter, Andy Kirk as well, being able to sort of try and develop a player, maybe not write them off as quickly as sort of saying, nah, you're not there, we're not wanting you. So an opportunity there.
Yeah, no, I think it is definitely. It's been a shame that he hasn't got the game time, and it's been a shame that he hasn't developed the way that it would have been good with him being out on loan, but it's nice that Robson's taken the chance. But no, I don't want to say take the chance, that he's shown the support. He's not taking a chance on him. He's obviously in training and everything, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point that, again, they'll be able to see what he offers in training. He's obviously integrated with the squad, he knows them all. So, yeah, just a chance to be able to potentially kick on and see how he does. I think that's something that's interesting. It comes up quite a lot in podcasts nowadays and sort of football fan media. Is a sort of talk about how Liverpool over the last few years have a willingness that they're always looking to try and sort of sign players that have had potential setbacks, like injuries or sort of frustration points in their career. So really keen to see how that develops and whether they keep him as a sort of wing back, whether they're looking to move him up pitch. You never know in terms of these opportunities for younger players. Speaking of younger players, we do have a new arrival as well, Leslie. Young Logan Rayside joins from the Community Foundation. Obviously, the family ties there with Robbie Rayside, but he's coming in as a centre midfielder. What did you make of that? Obviously, good to see the foundation once again offering a bit of pathway to the club. And again, I know that I mentioned it before, but potentially with this new cooperation system, something that we can potentially utilise to be able to offer them game time, maybe at a senior level, without maybe potentially being at Rovers, but still have them in and about training with the club.
Yeah, really happy to see that. That horrible thing when you get to the age and you're like, oh, in this case his uncle, but his dad was some player, his uncle was some player. But no, yeah, great to see a name from the past coming back. I suspect that, like Callum Hanna's first season, maybe like Jake Nicholson last season, it's going to be a case of him being, certainly up until Christmas, in and around the squad, just to kind of get a sense of what it's like being a full-time professional footballer. And then maybe, I'd imagine, possibly after Christmas, we might look at getting him out on loan somewhere. But no, again, that's a good number of players now. We've had players coming through the Community Foundation. Callum Hanna's come from the Kirkcaldy Dysarts. We've had players coming from various youth systems, youth teams and setups in and around the Kirkcaldy area. And in some ways, that's maybe as good as actually having your own academy or something like that. Having these various pathways for the different clubs in the community for guys who've got a bit of potential to come in and then get them in and around a professional squad and get them out. I mean, it would be good if we could get Logan out somewhere and see how he develops. Jeff, whether that's through a sort of formalised partnership agreement with a club at a lower level, or whether that's just on a case-by-case basis to see who's needing a player in that position, who's likely to play him in that position, who's maybe got a coach or a few experienced heads in their squad that might help him kick on. So, I mean, no, but as I say, it's great just to see somebody like that. And I'm just going to pick up on one other thing with Callum Hanna as well, which is that I do wonder if Robson has seen something. Because if you think about it, so we've got, in terms of the left back and left wing back position, we've got Lewis Stevenson signed up. And Lewis Stevenson keeps himself in great nick, but it's starting to be quite a big ask for somebody of that age to do a shift for 90 minutes every single game, especially if you're playing as a left wing back. So I mean, we do have other people in the squad that can fill into that role, but really, if Stevenson's not available at the moment, you're probably asking somebody to be playing out of position, or somebody like Lewis Gibson to be adapting their skill set. So right now, Callum Hanna is our second choice left back, and so that's a thought as well. I don't know if anybody else is lined up. If we're looking at someone else coming in, But it might be that Barry Robson has looked at his physical attributes, his pace, and actually just thought, there is something there, and there's something that I think I can develop over the course of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Lewis Gibson there. That's, again, another player that he didn't really get as much game time as he probably hoped last season. Probably a point of frustration, but he's on a multi-year contract. The rumours I'd sort of seen mentioned from a Queen of the South fan, it wasn't them, but there's sort of clubs that potentially been in touch in terms of a loan deal. Whether that comes to fruition or whether that's just nonsense rumour mill that you get on Pie and Bovril, who knows. But again, even still, as a player, I think it's quite easy to sort of sleep on that. It's players like him will be coming back from the summer and sort of saying, like, I'm wanting to make a mark here. I don't want to just be sitting about and just sitting getting appearances, racking up sort of sub-appearances. He wants to be in the first team and he wants to be starting. So just that grit and determination there to be able to hopefully be able to force that change. And I think we're all in the mindset of at the moment, and certainly for me, I don't know about anyone else, but you kind of feel like because of the way that the last season ended, you're sort of automatically assuming that we're going to be going into next season playing wing backs. And I know I've said that before, but whether we potentially change it up or we're using pre-season to sort of trial different sort of formations. And again, you never know in terms of stuff like bounce games, whether we've run a wider squad to be able to do bounce games and things like that. Because certainly for the Community Foundation, there's a lot of talent that is in there. When you hear about some of the names that are involved, and again, these you sort of get it through the grapevine, and how that'll pan out over the next few seasons. Something to definitely keep an eye on, because I feel like it's a matter of time before a talent comes through and again into the first team, much like we had with the Fife Elite. But even if we're offering them opportunities within the club, I think it's still a positive. It still speaks volumes about there being a pathway there. Just for yourself, Carol, just to come to you next. So we've obviously made a few additions in terms of the squad, a couple of sort of wider players with the likes of Richard Chin and Gyro as well. And then on top of that, obviously, Josh Ray coming in, Ian Glavin coming in, Callum Logan. Where do you think we look next, or do you think it's something that maybe that we're sort of looking towards, maybe just a couple of more additions? Do you think, is it going to be sort of more in terms of a sort of forward option that we'd be looking at, or maybe in terms of midfield? What are your sort of thoughts in terms of the squad at the moment?
My gut reaction to that question is I think we're, apart from maybe having just a couple of extra players, but versatile players that in case there's any injuries, I think we've got a pretty solid squad. I feel quite comfortable going into the start of the season. I'm pretty much the same as you, Robbie. I want to see what formation we have. I want to see what the pre-season, ending last season on such a high. I've got this not this horrible feeling, but this feeling that I'm setting myself up for like this shock that the start of the season might not be the same as the end of last season. But no, I don't. There's not any position that I'm thinking, oh, we're a bit short there. But any addition to the squad is always good, I think.
We got your nerves calmed from before with your goalkeepers. When we got two goalkeepers signed, that was a big sigh of relief for you, because I know that the conversations have been going around where are our goalkeepers? Well, where are our games? We've not got any games lined up yet.
It was getting close to games, though. It was getting close to games.
We were sorted for pre-season.
Yeah.
It only took us a day or two into pre-season and we've got them sorted. Leslie, how about for you? I mean, again, I've mentioned sort of midfield and up top, but then as well, we've lost you and Murray, so we're down a centre-back compared to last season. So where do you think Rovers will potentially look next if they're going forward in terms of their transfer business?
Losing you and Murray is... Well, we're losing a centre-back. We do have Jordan Doherty, though. And with Gyro coming in, we do now actually have a proper designated right back. So we've already got a decent number of defenders on the books that can play in various positions. And like we were just saying, it's not necessarily going to be the case that we're going to be running with a back three. It could be that we play with a back four, in which case the need for an extra centre-back is maybe less pressing. Up top, that's where I might expect to see somebody coming in. If Jack Hamilton is back and fully fit, that is going to be a huge addition to the squad as well. Callum Smith too, we've given him a short-term deal, but again, I'm optimistic that Barry Robson, again, has maybe looked at some of the highlight videos and has looked at some of the games before he picked up his injury. And again, has maybe thought, there's a player here that I can get something out of. But we probably do need somebody to replace Jamie Gullan. So on one hand, it was a bit unfortunate losing Jamie Gullan to St Johnstone in a bidding war. But then again, that would have meant for the third season running, as we've said many times on here, we were starting with the same strike force, which is not ideal when you consider its sort of return. So it's forced our hand a bit. I would be very surprised if we weren't looking for somebody that could come in. If we do bring somebody in, I'm going to bet quite a significant amount of money that it will be somebody that none of us have ever heard of before. I think, given where the signs have come from so far, I think if somebody does come in, it's quite likely to be somebody from down south. But no, I think we've got a decent squad. It's worth remembering, like Rudy said in the interview, we don't have an awful lot of money, despite what Morton fans might tell us, despite what supporters of other teams might try and lecture us about. We don't actually have an awful lot of money. We don't have a huge budget. And so that question of value for money is really important. We can't just sign players because they're solid championship players for the sake of bolstering our numbers. We do need to ensure that we're getting value for money out of who we bring in, which sounds like a really dull thing to say, but it is important. So I think, probably I wouldn't expect to see more than one or two more guys coming in between now and the start of the season.
Yeah, I definitely feel that it's one to keep an eye on, and that you never know where our next move will come from, certainly based on some of the summer transfer business that we've had already. I suspect you are right, though, that it would be one that's maybe going to be a bit out of left field. And I would be keen to see how that would go, to be honest. Always interesting when you get those sort of figures coming to the club. So, just Leslie, just to come back to you just briefly, is there any sort of interesting moves that have caught your eye? I asked this a couple of podcasts ago to the guys, but is there any sort of moves across the sort of championship, looking at nearest toe poker, of players that have moved to other championship clubs that have caught your eye so far?
I was interested to see Aaron Lyle getting picked up by Ross County. Seems quite surprising. Again, that's another player whose career looked like it was flatlining and hanging on by their fingernails to full-time professional football, and has come in and the gaffer's got him running through brick walls, and he's secured himself a move on to a bigger team. So that's good for him, I suppose, isn't it? It reflects well on him that he's moving on. It is interesting, both the St Johnstone and Ross County, that a lot of their recruitment has been bringing in players from other championship teams. St Johnstone in particular, bringing in Boys Baird at centre half, and also bringing in Jamie Gullan and now Sam Stanton as well. A lot of their recruitment has just been picking up players that they think are competent at this level. I don't know whether that's just to expand their squad or whether these guys are likely to be starting. But the Aaron Lyle to Ross County was one that kind of surprised me. A lot of relief as well to see that some of the absolute pains in the backside from Airdrie will be departing out of the country. So Mason Hancock is off to Walsall, I believe.
Yeah.
Adam Frizzell has gone, they said, a European club. Was it confirmed it was Ireland?
It's Derry.
Okay, so he's out of the picture. Ben Wilson away to TNS as well, I believe. So that's three big pests that are away. Seeing where some of these players are moving, and unfortunately Todorov has moved to sign for Arbroath, so he is going to get his 3 headers from corners a season against us.
Not last season,
but no, I think as I said, not last season. If you take that out of the equation, though, I think it does just reiterate there is a lot of kind of lateral movement, and that's the market that we're in.
And just to round us off for this evening, Carol, there was a bit of a sort of tongue-in-cheek social media clip from Rovers just asking the players about what the best thing and worst thing about pre-season is. Ross Matthews in particular calls out the best thing being, I believe it was Ross Matthews anyway, Jack Hamilton and Callum Smith coming back. Again, nice touch from him to mention it and getting it flagged up. But how important do you think that is coming back for us, that we've got these players? Because they are effectively going to be like new signings, particularly Jack Hamilton. I know Callum Smith's obviously came back from a very serious injury, but with Jack Hamilton, there was a bit of a discussion on Brian Bovril in terms of his sort of goals and the impact that he's had. He's spent a lot of time, as far as I've heard through the grapevine, which I seem to get a lot of my information through, is that had a lot of difficulty in terms of sort of smaller injuries. I've not stopped him from playing, but I've held him maybe back from where he wants to be. And just even in terms of the goals that he's had, I mean, first season he got, I believe, 12 goals for the course of the season before we sort of brought in Zach Rudden towards the sort of tail end of that campaign. And then as well, last season playing through injury to, I think he got, trying to remember, I think it's maybe about 5 or 6 goals that he got. Being able to get him injury-free for a full campaign, hopefully, fingers crossed, again, you can never predict the future. But yeah, how big an addition do you think he'll, and of course Callum Smith, who I know he's been much vaunted as a potential Barry Robson-esque player with his work ethic. How big do you think those two additions will be? Because to all intents and purposes, potential new signings as such.
Yeah, that's the best thing about it. It's going to be like a new signing. And also Louis Vaughan as well. He was just coming back in at the end of last season. We have got old but new players. We've not seen them, and they've got something to prove. And I think our behind the scenes, our physio team and everything seems to be really working on bringing the players back stronger and fitter, not just getting them back, but getting them back so that they don't get the same injury again, which is what we need. We need to have players on the pitch, not in the treatment room, which would be nice.
I think best example of that is Ross Matthews in terms of the sort of chronic injuries that he had for a few seasons, and then just be able to get him back. And he's really thrived again under Barry Robson in the role that he's worked in. So time will tell. Obviously, pre-season they'll be hard at work at the moment. Next pre-season games, obviously, our first pre-season games coming up, I believe next weekend. So yeah, one to keep an eye on. And we will, of course, be back in due course to be able to talk about that and look ahead to the League Cup. But yeah, once again, thank you for taking the time for listening, and bye for now.